In the fall of 1997, my family moved to a small town called Ashbrook, deep in the heart of Oregon. It was a quiet, foggy place, surrounded by ancient pine trees. We had just bought an old house on a mortgage, located at the end of Maple Hollow Road, right next to an abandoned lot that the locals called Dead Hollow. They said it used to be a native cemetery, but now it was just a vacant lot with tall grass, tall reeds, and rotting fences. No one dared to go there at night. My name is Daniel, and I was 16 years old at the time. There were 3 of us in my family. My mother was a nurse, and my father had died in an accident a few years earlier. I didn't pay much attention to the rumors until strange noises started to ring out after midnight. First came the moaning, soft but steady, like someone whispering in the wind. Then came the shadow of a person among the tall reeds. I thought I was imagining things, until one night I saw a pair of glowing red eyes peeking out from behind the rotten fence. Things started to change in the house. The old clock stopped ticking at 3:13 every morning. The lights in the room kept turning on and off, even though no one had touched them. My mother started having trouble sleeping, having nightmares about a woman standing in a dark field, calling her by her real name. Once, as I turned to look back at the land, I saw a shadow standing among the reeds, motionless, as if watching me. And then I found an old piece of paper stuck to the back of an attic window. On it was written in childish scrawl, "Don't look that way. They look back." After reading the warning, I couldn't sleep. The feeling of being watched haunted me all day. I tried to tell my mother, but she just told me to watch less horror movies. "There's no one out there," she said, but she didn't know what I'd seen. 2 days later, as I got up early to get ready for school, I noticed something strange. There were footprints in a thin layer of frost covering the ground behind my house, from the vacant lot all the way to my back door. They were barefoot prints, small but long, like those of a child or an adult with unusually long toes. I followed the tracks, which led me to a rotten wooden fence. Part of the fence was pushed aside, as if someone had been through it often. I turned to go back into the house, but suddenly I felt a cold draft run down the back of my neck, accompanied by a slight rustling in the reeds. That night, I stayed up late to keep watch. Around 2 a.m., as I opened my bedroom window and looked out the field, I saw a small figure crouching across the lawn. It stopped in the middle of the field, then slowly turned, and I saw its face. Not quite a human face. It was wrinkled and gray, with eyes as large as a rat's, sunken and blood red. Its mouth was open to the ears, revealing jagged teeth like fish spines. I stepped back, dropping the glass I was holding. The shattering sound brought my mother running in. I tried to tell her what had happened, but all she could see was me shaking with fear. The next morning, my mother called a handyman to rebuild the back fence and secure the back door with a new lock. But it seemed like the thing had no intention of stopping. A week after Mom locked the back door and put up the fence, everything seemed peaceful. But I knew it was only temporary. On Friday night, as the storm raged and lightning streaked across the sky, I heard a creaking sound coming from the ceiling. Footsteps, slow, soft but definite, like someone walking across the ceiling of my room. At first I thought it was a mouse, but it was heavy and steady, like human feet. I shakily climbed up the old ladder in the hallway closet to the attic. The attic hadn't been used since we'd moved in. Inside was dusty. There was an old wooden chest hidden behind a tarp. I pulled it out and opened the lid. Inside were a few old toys, a moldy rag doll, and a frayed leather-bound notebook. I turned on the flashlight and turned the pages slowly. It was a diary of a child named Ellie, who probably lived here. The trembling lines recorded, Mom doesn't believe me. But last night, it was standing outside my window. It called my name. It asked me to play with it. But when I got near the fence, it started crying loudly. It said it died there. It wants me to take its place. The last line was written in red ink, unlike the previous pages. I've gone over the fence. I can't go back. I slammed the book shut, my heart pounding. A cold wind blew across the back of my neck, though there were no windows open. From the darkness at the end of the attic, the old rag doll sat upright, though I was sure I had left it lie on its back when I opened the box. I rushed downstairs, slammed the attic door shut, and wedged it with a broom. That night, I couldn't sleep. Outside my window, the wasteland was shrouded in a white mist. But I saw something moving, a child, or would have been a child, looking straight at me, its mouth moving. "Ellie, go home." The next morning, I took the diary down and hid it in my bedroom closet. Part of me wanted to forget it all, but another part of me was compelled to find out more. The name Ellie and the way the diary ended kept me on edge. I decided to ask Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor who lived 2 doors down. She had been in the neighborhood for nearly 50 years, the type of old woman who lived a private life, rarely went out, and always had a look in her eyes that seemed to be hiding a secret. When I mentioned Dead Hollow and the notebook, she paled. She was silent for a moment, then spoke softly, as if afraid someone would hear. "My house used to belong to the Murrin family. Little Ellie went missing almost 30 years ago. The police searched the wasteland, but couldn't find her body. Her mother was taken to a mental hospital afterward. She led me into the house and pulled out a box of old photos from a closet. She said there were pictures of her when she was younger, including one of Ellie standing in front of my house, which is still my house. I picked up the picture. It showed a little blonde girl in a white dress, holding a doll just like the one I found in the attic. But what gave me goosebumps was that behind her, in the reeds, there was a shadow. It looked like the thing I'd seen that night, tall and lanky, with a misshapen head and eyes as black as a bottomless pit. I asked Mrs. Peterson about the shadow, but she refused to look at the photo again. She just mumbled, "It's not just Ellie. There was a child before that. And before that, every generation has one that's been called back." I asked, "What does call back mean?" She looked me straight in the eye. "It lives underground, in the Dead Hollow. It needs a child to keep it awake." I left Mrs. Peterson's house with a whirlwind. It had started to rain. As I passed my fence, I stopped. There was a torn photograph pinned to a tree with a rusty nail. I pulled it out and saw it was me from behind, standing in my bedroom, looking out at the fields. The photo was taken from outside the window, from inside Dead Hollow. That night, I couldn't sleep. The photo from the wasteland haunted me. Who took it, when, and most importantly, why? I turned on my flashlight and went to the back garden, where the old fence separated my house from Dead Hollow. I took Ellie's diary with me, hoping to find more clues. There was a scribbled drawing in it, a broken tree, a large rock with symbol engraved on it, and underneath it, "Door to the underground." I found the exact spot, near the far end of the lot, where no one else dared go. The broken tree was still there, and sure enough, there was a large stone beside it. I knelt down, ran my hand through the tall grass and thorns, and found a rusty iron ring sticking out of the ground. I pulled. The ground shook and a cellar door appeared, covered with moss and cobwebs. It was heavy, and the smell of mold and decay made me want to vomit. I turned on my flashlight and headed down. Below was a flight of rotten wooden stairs, leading into pitch darkness. I hesitated, but then stepped down. The air was cold and metallic. The walls were clay, scratched in places as if by claws. The sound of dripping echoed from deep within the tunnel. After a few minutes, I came to a small room. There were pictures on the walls, dozens of them, old and burned, all of them children. On the back of each one was a name. And in the middle of them all, the picture I had found on the tree, it was me. Beside the wall was a straw mannequin with a cloth head and a white dress. Someone had nailed a child's fingernails to its body. Each one had a name engraved on it. One was called Ellie, another Sarah, and one was blank, unmarked. My flashlight flickered, then went out. In the darkness, I heard breathing very close. Then a whisper rang out in her ear. "You've arrived, now stay." I scrambled up the stairs in panic. With each step, something crawled behind me, wheezing, slithering across the ground. As I dashed out a hatch and slammed the hatch shut, a loud thump sounded from below, as if something was trying to climb up, but was being held back. I lay gasping on the ground in the stillness of the night. Lightning flashed across the sky, and I swear, I saw its shadow, the creature in the photo, standing at the edge of the clearing, motionless, staring straight at me. That night, I locked the door, closed all the windows, and locked myself in my room with the iron hammer beside me. Although it was June, the air was as cold as midwinter. I did not dare turn off the light. But then, whether from fatigue or something more terrible, I fell asleep. I dreamed I was standing in a dead hollow, but the ground beneath my feet was no longer earth, but flesh, soft, warm, and pulsing like a heartbeat. In the sky, the black moon crumbled, falling like ashes. There was a cry. I followed it and saw a little girl sitting with her head down, her hair covering her face, wearing an old white dress. It was Ellie. I asked softly, "Do you need help?" The girl slowly raised her head. Her eyes were hollow, blood flowing from her eye sockets. But her mouth was still smiling, a smile as cold as ice. "He's hungry. Did you bring anyone for him?" I turned to run, but the dead hollow would seem to come alive, stretching on forever. Arms shot from the trees, from the ground, grabbing at my legs. I fell into the hole, and into a sealed room filled with the sound of a child sobbing. A hoarse male voice rang out from the darkness. Every generation, a child like blood tears must be shed. The first one to make the pact was your own ancestor. A cold wind blew through me. I saw blurry images. Ancient men lighting demon fires in the middle of Dead Hollow, sacrificing children to keep the village alive. Then I woke up. My forehead was covered in sweat. My hand still gripped the hammer tightly. But what sent a chill down my spine was this. My feet were covered in mud and my left hand had a deep cut, just like in a dream, where the shadow's arm had touched me. I looked down at the floor. On it, in wet mud, were childish footprints leading from the window to my bed, stopping at the edge of the bed. And beside it, in blood, someone had written, "Your turn." The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about that dream. The horrifying images and whispers still echoed in my head, as if I had actually witnessed what had happened centuries ago. But what disturbed me most was the blood on the floor, and the words, "Your turn." Everything pointed to one thing. I had been caught in a trap from which I could not escape. I decided to find out about the Moran family. They were the owners of this house before me. But after Ellie went missing, they disappeared overnight without a trace. I looked up documents in the library, asked people around the village, but everyone was silent. They talked about the Moran family as if they were ghosts, people who had lost their memories and were forgotten by history. Finally, I found an important clue, a letter written in the final days before the Moran family disappeared. The letter was not addressed to anyone, but simply recorded a confession. We did the unforgivable. We worshiped a dark entity and agreed to sacrifice children in exchange for life. They have not forgotten us. They will return when the new generation comes. And once again, we will pay the price. There was only one signatory to the letter, Daniel Maran. I couldn't breathe. Everything I had experienced was part of the old deal, a price to pay for the lives of those who lived here. The child they sacrificed, Ellie. And then I was being pulled into the circle. When I read the last paragraph of the letter, the atmosphere in the room became stifling. The last line was, "Don't come back. Don't ever come back. We've been possessed." I felt like someone was behind me, but when I turned around, there was no one. The lights in the room started flickering. It felt like an invisible force was pulling me towards a window. I looked out the window. The night light was dim. The sky seemed to be covered with a heavy layer of dark clouds. And just below in the darkness, I saw a figure standing, not moving. It's Ellie. But this time the girl didn't smile. Instead, her eyes were wide black like bottomless pits, and her mouth opened wide, releasing a sharp, unchildlike hiss. A scream echoed in my head. I stepped back, my hands shaking, trying to stay calm. Everything around me felt like it was collapsing, like the house was swallowing me, pulling me into the ground. I couldn't breathe anymore, and when I turned around, I realized I was no longer alone in the room. I heard a voice, not Ellie's this time, but someone else's, as if someone was laughing from the shadows. "Welcome home." The next morning, I couldn't get out of bed. My body felt heavy. My head was dizzy. Everything in the house seemed to have changed. Every object, every piece of furniture seemed to be watching me, waiting for something. The strange footprints from last night were still clearly visible on the floor. Trying to calm down, I opened Ellie's diary again, searching for a solution. Reading her words, I understood that she knew everything, even if she couldn't tell me the truth. The last lines were a warning to me. "We cannot run away. Don't trust anyone. They are not human." Fear began to creep into my bones. I couldn't go on like this, but I couldn't run away either. It was too late to hide. One evening, I decided to go to Dead Hollow again. The rusted iron door and the path leading down into the underground tunnel were still there, as if waiting for me. I couldn't live in fear anymore, couldn't let these secrets control my life. But I knew that once I entered, I wouldn't be able to go back. With the light from a flashlight in hand, I stepped down into the underground tunnel once more. This time, I heard no breathing or startled sounds like the last time. There was only an eerie silence. I walked into that room where the pictures had been hung and where I had seen traces of Ellie. But this time, something was different. On the wall were new pictures, not of children, but of me. Each photo had my name written on it, recording every moment of my life, up until now. I stood stunned in front of the last photo. It was a photo of me, standing there, with a face full of fear, eyes wide open as if about to cry. This photo was not taken by me. And then I heard laughter. That laugh, echoing throughout the dark space, belonged to none other than myself. Each laugh sent a chill through my body, as if 1,000 voices were echoing in my mind. I turned around and immediately saw a dark figure standing at the entrance of the cellar, eyes red as blood. It was not a human. It was an entity, something that did not belong to this world. "It's time for you to pay." It entered the room, slow and solemn. The flashlight beam illuminated it, but its shape was a shadow, shifting constantly. Its eyes glowed like two red cracks in the darkness. I couldn't run. I couldn't escape. Even though I had known it for a long time, I didn't want to believe it was true. You did it, and now it's your turn. The shadow laughed loudly, the laughter echoing throughout the dungeon. Something indescribable, as if millions of souls were screaming in rage. Suddenly, I realized the price I had to pay was not death. It's not that I'm being dragged into darkness. It's that my soul will be trapped here forever, like all the other souls, forever unable to rest. And I get it. I'm part of this loop. No one can escape it. No one. I couldn't move, couldn't say anything, could only stand there, eyes glued to the approaching darkness. It felt like all the life in me was slowly fading away. The dim light of the flashlight flickered, not enough to illuminate this dark space. From within the darkness, its voice rang out again, cold as a night dew. You are the next generation. You will continue what your ancestors started. There's only one path to survival, and that is the price to pay. It wasn't a person. It was a spirit, a being trapped in the darkness of Dead Hollow for centuries. I felt a chill, an invisible presence pressing down on me. I understand the truth. This is not a haunted house. This is where the souls of children, who were sacrificed to keep others alive, are trapped forever, and I will be their replacement, part of an unbreakable cycle. The fear no longer came from the darkness around me, but from my own soul. It felt like an invisible force was robbing me of my vitality and spirit, pulling me into an endless pit from which there was no escape. But then I remembered the warning in Daniel Marin's letter. Don't come back. Never come back. That was the key. The price I had to pay was not death. It was that I was bound to the Dead Hollow forever, unable to escape, unable to move on. If I wanted to end this cycle, I had to find a way to free all these souls, to end this cruel contract. At that moment, I felt Ellie's presence. She stood there, right next to me, not a ghost this time, but a real spirit. Ellie's eyes were no longer fearful, but rather understanding, the eyes of someone who had accepted her fate. Save us, Ellie said in a weak but strong voice. Free us from this loop. The dark shadow, no longer smiling, just stood there, as if waiting for me to decide. The oath the Marin family made with the dark forces was the cause of it all. They traded the lives of their children for their own immortality. But now, it was up to me to break that agreement. Only when I do that can this cycle end. With all my remaining strength, I took a deep breath, walked toward the dark shadow, and said softly, I am not afraid of you anymore. I will break this cycle. Immediately, there was a loud explosion, as if everything was falling apart. Every image, every soul, every existence in Dead Hollow began to fade into darkness, as if it had never existed. The black shadow began to scream, but could not stop its release. The whole house shook violently. Every wall, every layer of earth and rock began to crumble. My body felt light, as if my soul was flying away, free from the grip of darkness. When I woke up, I was no longer in the house. I was standing in an empty field, where the gentle morning light shone down. The birds were chirping happily. The wind was blowing gently, and the cool air made me feel like I had just emerged from a long nightmare. I no longer saw the Dead Hollow, no longer saw the dark shadow, no longer saw the trapped souls. It was all over, but a strange feeling still lingered in me. A faint laugh echoed in my head, as if someone was still watching me. I turned around, and although I couldn't see anything, I felt a gaze from afar. It was Ellie's gaze. "Thank you," her voice whispered in the wind.